key messages students shall take home. Mr. Johann Schneider-Ammann.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We need two achievements. We need skills and we need values, we need personalities. And my first lesson to this classroom would probably be about what is a value, what is a personality, and we would philosophize all together about such kind of needs in all the phases of our lives, behind and before. That's completely independent of all about technology and technique.
Let's remember that point, how we get the right personalities. Angie Hobbs, which would be your key message?
I want to see more, you won't be surprised to hear, I want to see more philosophy both in primary and secondary education, not just as an examined subject, but even more as an unexamined subject. I believe that some training in asking the right kinds of questions, in analysing concepts, in thinking outside the box, I believe philosophy will give children the kind of mental agility, rigour, clarity of thinking that's going to be crucial in the changing times ahead. And I believe it will help us as a race, as a human race, think through issues to do with flourishing and what it is to live a flourishing life, which are going to be crucial if we're going to have to consume less, maybe be less wealthy, in all the kind of changes that are going to come. We need to put education and all these other technological developments in a bigger framework of the ethics and politics of flourishing.
Jimmy Wells, I know you're not a big fan of classrooms, but still, you know, if you were in front of a classroom, what would be the title of your lecture? What's the key message?
Oh, I mean, I am a big fan of classrooms, and actually one of my key lessons is what we've seen with the advent of the online world is an absolute explosion in informal learning. So people learn things, they go to Wikipedia, they take online courses in a casual way. But what we need to be doing in the classroom, and formal education is more or less stable. A number of people graduating from university every year is maybe on the uptrend, maybe down, but not radically shifting. Everyone needs to be prepared for a lifetime of learning. So this actually fits in very well with your message. We're no longer in a world where what you expect to do is go to school for a set number of years, and now you've learned everything, and then you go out into a career. You learn for a set number of years, but what you really need to be learning is how to learn using the new tools, because all those opportunities are out there, but if people aren't equipped to take advantage of them, they'll never be able to.
Lifelong learning and knowing how to use new tools. Gordon Brown, you've been traveling a lot. You know the impact of technology on education. What is your key message?
Well, the only constant is change, and people have got to recognise that perhaps half the jobs that people are doing now may themselves be redundant as occupations 20 or 30 years from now. And so when someone was joking about what the jobs that young people can look forward to, they were saying drone dispatcher, someone sending up drones into the skies. Robot polisher, we saw the robots, but someone's got to polish them. Avatar assistant, all these different jobs, terms we've never heard of, and we're going to have to get used to it because the only constant is change. So every child will need IT skills. In theory, the best library in the world should be available to the poorest child in the most remote area of the world through using information technology and computers and even mobile phones. Secondly, like Jimmy said, people have got to learn how to learn. And so adaptability is going to be crucially important. And thirdly, to take up the points others have made, I think you need education in citizenship. We've got to learn to live with people of different religions and different races and different nationalities. In Lebanon, which is the most troubled country, or one of the most troubled countries in the world, at the age of 9, there is a citizenship curriculum where children learn about the different religions of the world and learn how to coexist. And we're going to have more of that to meet the needs of different nationalities and to understand the different concerns that people have in different parts of the world. So we need IT skills, we need to learn how to learn, and we need to understand each other better. And schools, which are actually probably the most unreformed institutions. I mean, the school classroom is not too different from what people wrote about in the 19th century, whereas every other area of business and industry has changed. school classrooms are going to have to be very different to cope with these changes.
This is why we're here, because we want to raise awareness.
Yes.
Alain Dehaze, your company is also present in over 60 countries. What, from your point of view, is the biggest change, biggest impact of technology on education?
First, I would project the nice picture you have presented to us when you were seeing young people with their mobile at the top of a skyscraper in New York. And then I would tell them, travel the world, discover the world. Because in this future world, we will need people with different language knowledge. And the best way to really take a language is to live it in another country, and especially English. But also to learn all the other culture, because in this global world, it will be more and more important to have this sensibility for other culture. The second advice I would allow me to give is competencies and so on, yes, but you will learn that later. First, work on your behavior, on your attitude. That's very important. Be creative, how to become creative, how to really start to work together. Collaboration will be enormous important in the way forward. And the third message will be prepared to learn for your whole life, because that's the way it is. Knowledge is now accessible everywhere, anywhere, at any time, but also at any age. And the challenge we have is that for the future, we will have to learn permanently. That would be the three messages I would give.
These three messages are being heard right now, I can assure you, by young people, because I was thinking, we talk about the topic through the lens of experts, but talking about young people in education, we might just as well hear what they're saying. So I asked our correspondents to go to Shanghai, to Hong Kong, to Core, to Berlin, to Washington, just to ask the students, what are your worries? What is your biggest message to you here on the panel? So we are being watched here by the most critical and most important audience of all. Let's start with a vocational training college in Switzerland, Core, and also with a student of economy in Shanghai. Let's see what they've got to say.
Automation will push some people out of the labor force. It will affect the low-end, cheap labor force, but for the high-end labor force like us, there will actually be more opportunities, such as jobs like designing robots and automation. So this will split up the labor force, and people with higher education will profit.
其实这是一种劳动力的分化，还有更高端的那种进化吧，我觉得。
Will digitalization have a positive or negative effect on the future economy? Will the work of multimedia specialists be replaced by machines in the future?
Well, Gordon Brown, you mentioned it, the drone dispatches and so forth. But there's a worry about young people. Will we be replaced by machines? What do you tell them?
I think in every generation there's a worry that because technological change is happening, that jobs will inevitably be less than they are now. I think it's possible that you can create more jobs, but people are doing different things. And clearly, as the economy becomes more prosperous, there are more jobs in the service sector. I don't agree that all low-paid jobs are going to be under pressure, because jobs where there is a personal service involved, where there's a one-to-one contact, people who are carers and helpers and nursery assistants and so on, these jobs are going to continue to grow. But it is true to say we're going to have a divide unless we do something about it, a polarization between rewarding very little those people who are in relatively low-skilled jobs and rewarding perhaps in a way that is sometimes excessive people at the very top. And I think the danger is we become a world where people are aware of the gap between the opportunities that they want and desire and see other people have and the actual opportunities that in practice they get. So we have got to be aware that we've got to do something about this potential polarization, this divide, this dichotomy within the labor force and therefore within society between people who do very well but people who are also suffering. And in particular, of course, in poorer countries where there is still massive poverty that we've got to do something about.
Exactly. But there's these current figures that are quite disturbing, saying that millions of jobs will be destroyed in the future and only some percentage will be created by new technologies. And people in education, they think, will I have a job in the future, Mr. Johan Schneiderman?
I had a meeting with Swiss entrepreneurs earlier this morning, and we discussed exactly this topic. We discussed how do we manage to keep the unemployment rate down? In other words, how do we manage to offer to almost everybody a perspective, which means a job, which means an apprenticeship? And we came to the conclusion in saying what we have to do is to invest into the young people, basic knowledges, basic skills, personality aspects, as I already mentioned, which means reliability.
But do we do it?
We do it. And in this tiny country, Switzerland, we do it in particular. We invest into our young people. 2 out of 3 young Swiss go